Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett. It's that time of the week to go over my top 10 college football games for this week. Now, I will give you a warning. This week, there's not many as great games on paper as there was last week and as there could be next week. But the bright side is whenever that situation happens, it means there's chances for a lot of good, cool upsets. So let's get started between the biggest game with number 3 in Miami, her 4.5 point favorites, versus 18 Florida State. Prime time and ABC game, one of the big rivalry games in Florida. This would have been cooler on paper if Florida State would have remained undefeated coming into this game. But I still think this is going to be a good game regardless. Florida State has to win this game to not only stay to try to be contenders in the ACC, but also to make the playoffs as an at-large team, in my opinion. I think the defense for Florida State is concerning after what I saw against Virginia, and then also Florida State is a very heavy run team because with their quarterback they like to run the ball a lot. So if Miami's defense can contain the run, then they should be fine and win despite playing a bad road environment or a tough road environment. I have Miami winning 31-27. So next you got number 2 on my list. You got 16 Vanderbilt versus 10 Alabama. Um, it's amazing that Vanderbilt is coming to this game undefeated. It's the first time that's happened since it's like this is the first time where both these teams are actually ranked coming into this game since 1937. It's been that long. I love the story with Vanderbilt. I predicted that they would be better, or at least on par with what they did last year, and I'm proven correct. Because some people thought there was going to be, some analysts thought there was going to be a drop off. I was like, no, 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 they're going to be fine, and they are. Um, Both defenses can be had in this game, so I expect some offensive fireworks in this matchup. I don't think Alabama will be feeling themselves after upsetting Georgia this past week because of what happened to them at Vanderbilt last year, so that's going to be fresh on their minds. So I have the Tide getting the win, but I'd be actually a little bit surprised if Alabama covers the 10.5 point spread there. I'm not sure if they'll do that, but I think they'll win. I have them winning 41-37. Number 3, you got 14 Iowa State versus Cincinnati, who are 1.5 point favorites. The Cyclones better watch out here. This has upset alert written all over it. And if you keep in mind, if you follow Iowa State, their one true road game that they've had so far this year, because I'm not counting the game in Dublin, because that's not a true road game, it's a neutral game. Both teams had to be in that situation. So the one true road game that they faced so far was Arkansas State, and they needed to hold on to win that game by one possession against Arkansas State, who again is not that good of a team. Um, so I can see the Cyclones overlooking the Bearcats here. If it wasn't for a bad play call and decision making in the Nebraska game back in week 1, the Cincinnati could be undefeated right now. I think this will be a competitive game. I think what's made the difference in this game, because I've gone back and forth, what's made the ultimate difference for me is that both of Iowa State's cornerbacks are out for the season. Yikes. And to make it worse, their second and third string corners are all questionable in this game, according to the injury report. So therefore, I feel Cincinnati. They showed last week that they can pass to win. They don't have to just run. So I feel like they'll show that again this week, and they can get a big win out of winning 24-20. Number 4, you got 11 Texas Tech, who are 11.5 point favorites versus Houston, who's undefeated as well. It's amazing that this is the only matchup of undefeated teams this week, but here we are. I think the Houston game could be tricky. We saw Texas Tech against Utah 2 weeks ago that the crowd noise can definitely be a factor for them with all the false starts that they had. Houston also has a solid defense to speak of, kind of like Utah has a good defense. However, after what Texas Tech proved on defense in their game against Utah, I just don't see how Houston can outscore Tech to win here if it comes to that. Also, interesting fact, both teams have played a common opponent. And when Texas Tech played a winless Oregon State team, albeit, Texas Tech got them at home versus Houston when they go on the road. But when Texas Tech played a winless Oregon State team, they blew them out. Last week, Houston needed an overtime win and got lucky just to survive that game. And therefore, I'll take the Red Raiders to get a road win here. I have the winning 31-16. Number 5, you got Mississippi State versus 6 Texas A&M, or 16.5 point favorites. Mississippi State showed that this past week that they're not an easy out. Like Texas A&M will have to be better on offense than they were last week in order to get the win here and avoid an upset. I think they will be, and therefore I have A&M remaining undefeated, but I would take Mississippi State to cover that large spread though. I have A&M winning 34-23. Number 6, we got 24 Virginia versus Louisville, who are 6.5 point favorites. It looks like Virginia might finally be relevant, especially on offense. And by relevant, I mean, hey, they're at least making a bowl game being interesting. Luckily, the NC State road game that happened early in the year for them didn't count as a conference game, so therefore they're still undefeated in conference play. I think this will be a fun shootout. However, after the big win over Florida State this past week, I feel there may be a little bit of a letdown here as Louisville, who's a very solid team, gets the win to remain undefeated, either winning 38-31. Number 7, you got Michigan State versus Nebraska, who are 11.5 point favorites. Both teams are coming off a bye week. So far for Nebraska, things have still not been clicking against Power 4 teams this year. A lot of people thought year 3 was when they're going to take that big jump, but so far they're looking like the same mediocre team they were last year. So I do feel like against a fellow mediocre team, Michigan State, they can get the win here. Not sure if they'll cover the spread, but I have Nebraska winning 27-20. Number 8, you got Washington, who are 6.5 point favorites versus Maryland. For a half, Washington put up a great fight against the number 1 team in Ohio State for last week. Now they have to make a far trip out east. I know Maryland is undefeated, but they haven't played anyone. They play like NIU and some like FCS, Western Michigan, wherever, and then the one Big Ten team that they face so far is Wisconsin, who's at the bottom of the barrel of the Big Ten right now. So I don't buy them, and neither is Vegas, which is why Washington's a favorite on the road here. Therefore, I think Washington can do just enough to get the win. Since I can still feel like they could be a potential dark horse contender in the Big Ten, because if you remember, in my preseason predictions, I had Washington being a playoff team. So I feel like that could still be the case potentially. Just had them winning barely here, 24-23. Number 9, you got Duke for 2.5 point favorites versus California, an ACC matchup here, surprisingly. I know things were rough for Duke in non-conference play. However, as I predicted, they are still technically a dark horse contender in the ACC, and they're already 2-0 to begin conference play. California has just been okay, and maybe they make a bowl game this year, which would be good for them with a freshman quarterback and all, but I'm not buying them at all. They got shut out by dismantled by San Diego State, and they had to hang on against what appears to be a bad Boston College team this past week. Now, the teams on the East Coast that travel out west, since conference realignment has happened, has typically not done well. So I can see California being competitive here at home, but I do think Duke is to win to remain undefeated in league play. I have them winning 27-23. And then last but not least, you get a G5 versus P14 here, and you got Boise State versus 21 Notre Dame, or 20.5 point favorites. I know after week 1, everyone wrote Boise State off from being like a G5 playoff contender. However, if they were to get a win here, they would still have a very good case, depending on if USF wins their conference or not. Since Notre Dame's defense can be had, Boise State, can be competitive in this game, and maybe they can score some points. However, if Boise State's defense couldn't stop South Florida's run game back in week 1, then what are they going to do with Notre Dame's run game? So the question in this game will only be, well, can the Broncos remain competitive and cover the large spread there? So I have Notre Dame winning 38-20. So also for people that are interested, this past week I came out with my updated college football bowl projections for the first time this year. So if you want to look at that, make sure to go to my LinkedIn page down to red to go ahead and look at that. Thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel and tell me about me. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful weekend of football.